So I'm going to slide up here a little bit, slide my notes up a little bit, and then I'm going to put that again um, because I feel like if we focus on just one of these right now, it's probably going to be a little bit easier before I come back, and I won't try to overload you. So I'm going to write the word mixed, and then I'm going to write improper fraction. So basically, we're going to go from a mixed number to an improper fraction. I feel like this is the easier one out of the two. I feel like this is one that most of my students can grasp pretty easily. Maybe it only takes them a couple of times to see it done. Um, Probably this is going to be something that most of my students, after just doing a few of them, you're probably going to want to do these mentally, and that's okay. They're going to be that easy for you. And so we're going to practice some. My advice here is take good notes, pay attention, listen to this video multiple times. I'm going to give an extra video for extra help on Canvas if you need to watch that. But this is a really, really easy process. And if you just follow along, you'll probably remember this. You probably saw this last year or something similar to it. Okay, so I'm going to start with the mixed number 8. And I'm going to go with 8 4/5. So let's talk a little bit about 8 4/5. 8 4/5, if I were to break that down and kind of analyze what that's showing me, 8 4/5 is really almost the number 9. And the reason why I would want all my students to see that or think about that is because it gives you a pretty good idea with what you're dealing with. You know, the number, or excuse me, the fraction 4/5, 4/5 is almost a whole. And so if you're looking at 8 and 4/5, then you're looking at 8 and something that's almost a whole. Well, 8 plus 1 is 9. So if I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, well, I'm almost dealing with 9 here, then you're pretty much right on it. You're analyzing this and kind of thinking ahead about what you're dealing with. You're dealing with something that's almost 9. So what I want to think about is I want to think about how could I change this? How could I convert it to where it's going to look like an improper fraction? Okay. The way I teach it is I do something that's called the circle method. So I'm going to come off to the side and I'm just going to write the word circle method. And I think when you see this in action, you'll be like, okay, that's what he means by circle method. So the circle method is really simple. What you're going to do is you're going to start with the denominator and you're going to kind of go in this circular motion and you're going to wrap all the way around this problem. And as you do that, you're going to think about really two types of math problems here. You're going to think about a multiplication problem. So I want you to put a little X down here by the 8 and the 5, or a multiplication symbol. And then I want you to put an addition symbol in between the 8 and the 4. And I want you to watch how this plays out. This is really simple. So if I start with the 5 and I go in a circle here, I'm going to start with 5 times 8, which is 40, plus 4, which is 44. And by doing that, I already have part of my answer. So my numerator in my answer is going to be 44 for this problem. And I'll show it again. This is how I got 44. I started with 5. I went in a circle, used my circle method here. 5 times 8 is 40, plus 4 is 44. And so now I've got my numerator. Okay. What's really interesting about these problems, and you're going to hear me say this a bunch this week, is there's something that never changes. So down here, put a little star and write this note. Denominators never change. When you're working on these problems this week, just keep in mind that the denominators never change. So my denominator in this problem was fifths, so I'm going to keep fifths as my answer. And now I have an improper fraction that is equal to my mixed number that I started with. And again, that's really important that you guys understand. We've talked about this word now a few times. The word is equivalent. When you see 8 4/5, you need to understand that there is something equivalent to 8 4/5, and that is 44/5. 8 4/5 is equivalent to 44/5. They are the same thing. In other words, if you draw those out in a picture, the pictures look exactly the same. And that's it. That's all the math is. You're taking a mixed number and you're changing it over to an improper fraction. And as long as you can do that, you're good to go. All right. Practice makes perfect. We're going to do a few of these. Here we go. Next one. I'm just going to try another one. Let's take 9 3/10. Now, one thing I will say about this is sometimes kids will ask me, well, how big do the numbers get on this? Do they get really big? Do our fractions get really big? The answer, or do the mixed numbers get really big? The answer to that really is no. The numbers stay pretty low. I mean, yeah, you might see some double digits occasionally, but I don't think you're ever going to see anything up into like the triple digits. That's usually not the case. Usually they stay pretty low with the numbers here. Okay, so watch what happens on this one. So this one, we have different numbers, but the math is going to stay the same. So I'm going to write an equal sign, and what I like to do on these sometimes is I like to start with my little star over here. If the denominators never change, then I'm going to go ahead and write tenths on this problem, because if it starts with tenths, it's going to end with tenths. What is going to be a little bit different is I'm going to be dealing with some different math here as far as my math problems. Up here, I have 5 times 8 plus 4. This one I'm going to have a little bit different problems, but as far as the way to do it, is not going to change. So I'm going to do 9 times 10, or I'm going to start here at the 10. 10 times 9, I should say, is going to give me 90 plus 3. Well, 90 plus 3 is 93. There's my numerator. 93 tenths. That's it. That's all you got to do. All right, let's look at one more. So this one here is, again, maybe you see something like this where the numbers jump up a little bit. So I'm going to write 14 as my whole number. And then I'm going to write 2/7 as my fraction. And then I'm going to think, okay, if I want to convert this, I want to change it over from a mixed number to an improper fraction. Excuse me. How do I do that? Well, again, the math's the same. The numbers might change a little bit, but the math is the same. So I'm going to start with my denominator. My denominator is sevenths. This time, I'm going to go in this circle motion. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to add. Here's the only issue I might run into. Maybe when I'm working some of these that maybe have some bigger numbers, maybe I have to just do some work off to the side. Hey, if I don't know 7 times 14, I just want to go show my work. There's no shame in that. I almost hope kids would want to do that because you're not risking making a silly mistake mentally. So I'm going to write 14 times 7 out to the side. I'm going to solve that. Well, 4 times 7 is 28. 7 times 1 is 7 plus an extra 2 is 9. So that's going to give me 98. But I have to add 2 if I'm going to go in this circular motion here. 7 times 14 is 98 plus 2 is going to be 100. And so now I have my answer. 100/7 is your final answer to that one. So when you're looking at this and you're thinking about how it's done, always remember the math is going to stay the same, just your numbers might change. So if your numbers change, just do what you got to do to get those answers. Most of the time, though, these stay pretty low and they're not too bad. So this is converting mixed numbers to improper fractions.